Hey everybody, welcome back to Guntote, Minnesota. This is the Fintiso Odyssey in gray on the blade, green on the scales. This is a new company to me that I have not tried out yet, so let's go ahead and use the blade a little bit. I'll talk about it as we go. Okay, let's try that again. So it is a relatively thin blade stock. It looks like a zip tie. It's not cutting through even when I'm applying quite a bit of force into it. So it doesn't feel like it's rounding the edge, but not quite cutting through. Yeah, there we go. With proper force, it looks like the edge can get through it. Just not going to do as many of those kind of pressure cuts as I'm used to. And the blade is sharp. This was shaving sharp when I got it, so I don't think it's an issue of sharpness. Maybe the wood is just a little too soft, but it can do it. Maybe not quite as well as some other ones. I know sometimes when a blade edge is actually really slicey, and it does really well with slicing, it doesn't pop these apart as well as some that have a thicker edge. So maybe perhaps because it is a little bit thinner behind the edge, it'll do better in slicing. We'll find out with cardboard. And it's just not going to do those kind of tasks with as much authority as a thicker edge would. But let's find out what happens. Water bottle. Yeah, it's plenty sharp, guys. It's definitely a plenty sharp knife. I'm not concerned about that at all. Let's just do a little bite test real quick to see how much this has. It's okay. It's not too bad. Again, EDC blade, it's not going to be a woodworking knife. That's not how it's designed. Yeah, I would say it does okay. It's really built for more kind of all-around use. I can tell this isn't something that's going to excel at any one thing. It just really isn't the design, but it seems okay at several. It's an adequate edge for sure. Relatively comfortable in hand. Actually, the design itself has a couple finger grooves. Some people prefer them, some people don't. And I would say the size actually fits my XL size hands pretty well. I have large size hands, and when I do a hammer grip like this, or reinforce it with a thumb up here, that's not bad. The contours of the handle have just a little bit of beveling. Hopefully you can see that there. That beveling helps to fit my hand a little more than most knives do, and it's got a little more thickness than most knives. Okay, here's something it should do relatively well at. Really shouldn't struggle with cutting cardboard with such a thin blade stock, which is a good thing. That's a compliment. I'm happy to see the thin blade stock. It shouldn't bind up too much in cardboard. Should slip through pretty well, and it's 14cn steel. Really easy to touch up, really easy to sharpen and hone, especially. It's a steel that is made for blades, and EDC blades especially. Might not be the more, hard use kind of steel, but it's definitely something adequate for what I'm doing now. I seem to be catching a little bit in a couple places on that edge. It still feels relatively sharp. Does seem to have a nice tip as well. Kind of a very cute tip. Try out that flipper. Flipper seems to work really well on this. Again, it's not a woods knife, but feathers relatively well. That V edge, it's going to be able to do really small, thin curls, no problem, as long as you have a decent piece of wood to curl on. Yeah, it's really not too difficult with a blade like this. That sweep and that belly lends to certain kinds of curls as well. Those kind of curls are really nice. If you needed something to help make a little tinder, it definitely would do the trick. Let's just see what that tip can do, if it's got some strength to it. Kind of a bow drill thing, which isn't a good test for an EDC blade technically. It's not what this is designed for. But if it can handle this, it can handle all those other tasks as well without chipping. And actually, it's doing pretty good. Now, if a blade like this is going to be worthwhile to me, it has to at least be able to do some kitchen prep, do something in the kitchen, cutting up apple for the kids. And it's got to be a little bit slicey to do something like that. It can't have too fat of an edge. I'll cut out a bit of the core because we're rich Americans and we don't have to eat every last bite, apparently. Let's see what kind of slicing it can do. Yeah, those are pretty thin slices. Let's take a look. It's almost transparent. Yeah, it can cut up an apple just fine. It's not binding up. The edge is not so fat that it can't handle that task. You know, with like a Scandi or something a little bit bigger, you would have some sort of trouble. It would bind up on you a little bit. And it just wouldn't produce these thin slices. It would usually blow it apart a little bit. But because of the grind that this has, which it's not technically a full flat grind, but it's almost there, it just slides through pretty well. No problems in the kitchen. I'm sure it would do just fine. Even with that coating, I'm not worried about that. Nice thin blade profile and a broad enough blade that it can handle simple tasks like this. So you can see it does have a really nice belly. It's got a swedge on the back, which is kind of a false edge up here, but it does allow for, I would say, a thinner blade profile overall, maybe less binding to some degree. And a lot of times if I want to save this part of the belly, I'll actually use the swedge, like opening packages and things like that. Just a nice feature. The belly of the knife right here, I found pretty useful for EDC tasks, opening packages, cutting up cardboard, and the usual things that 90% of us do with our EDC blades. But if you were going to skin an animal or do something with this, I don't know why you would with an EDC blade, but if you were going to, it's a good steel. The coating is good enough. It seems like the contours and the handle are easy to clean out, and I've been able to pull the pocket lint and whatever else out of this thing real easy because it's got a pass-through design on the interior. You can see that there. Really easy to clean out. It's really strong. Seems like a very robust blade. This is actually probably twice as robust as what I expected to be getting. I thought it would be like a very, very lightweight blade, and this is more robust, kind of a heavier duty kind of EDC blade perhaps, and it's a little longer than some of us carry with a bigger handle and thicker contour, but that just adds to the comfort overall. So if you don't mind a slightly heavier blade, this is really well made. And I'm going to say the materials, the fit and finish, excellent execution on that. As far as the function goes, that's going to be up to what do you need a blade to do? How do you use an EDC blade in your life? That's not something I can speak to particularly well, but I'll say for the average things that 90% of us do, it's going to be just fine for that. Again, this is by Fintiso 14C28N. That's a great steel for a blade. It's really made for knives, easy to hone and resharpen eventually. I haven't gotten there yet. Here's another shot of that profile. Something I should talk about is the pocket clip. I think the pocket clip is actually done particularly well on this blade. There's a pass-through to get to the recessed screws. The screws do not stick out of that pocket clip. They're not going to grab onto your pocket or the hem at all. Seems like they're actually recessed in there perfectly flush from my angle when I'm looking at. I like that. There's some attention to detail and thought process between what type of hardware, because it's Torx, and then also the size of the pocket clip. You're not going to lose it. It does have pretty good retention. I would say overall it's on a little bit on the tight side, but not overly tight. And it's not so grippy of a surface that it's going to be stuck on a pair of jeans. I think because of the smooth surface of the scales, this will come out relatively easy on all kinds of pairs of pants. The slacks that I'm wearing right now, they slip out just fine, but it is relatively deep carry in the sense that it comes up here. It also is a little bit longer, so you're going to have more to grab onto, and I'll show you that in a second, the way that it rides in my pair of pants right now. So these are a really thin pair of pants. They're kind of an outdoorsy, scratch-resistant pants, but not super thick. This right here is doubled up in the material, and it slips out no problems, goes back in relatively well. The lip on the side could be just a touch bigger, but it's not bad. And it's easy to do one-handed, and the actuation, of course, is very easy to do. This blade probably, yep, I could just use some sort of inertia, or I can use the flipper equally well, and thumb studs very easily from, let's see, yeah, just about any position. This isn't going to be hard to flip open. The action is very smooth on this knife. One more time, here's the flipper. Little bit of wrist helps it open up pretty good. And there's my shadow. Thumb studs work great. They protrude just enough, but not really beyond the handle scales, actually. So I find that the thumb studs are done pretty well. Left-handed or right-handed, you're not going to have issues. The flipper is just enough of a knob there to get a hold of it and quickly actuate it. And I'm telling you, the action is really smooth on this. They did a good job. The detent in there for the liner lock is a reasonable size detent, and it just sticks a little bit when I close it. Not bad, just a little bit. I can feel it a little bit if I don't press it down all the way, and kind of fluid motion with the closing. If I don't do it really well, I can feel it stick just a little bit, but not too much actually. There is a really generous sized lanyard loop in the end. I typically don't use those on folding knives, but lots of people do. So there's a grip. I don't know what the purpose would be for that grip other than just keeping it stationary in your hand in hard use. But it's not overly aggressive. I actually think it's very functional, and it's smooth, but it's functional. I don't know how to describe it other than that. It doesn't seem to be so aggressive that it would hurt your hand with time. I think using that, especially with a pair of gloves, wouldn't even know it's there, but it would serve its purpose. Blade centering seems to be absolutely perfect. No critiques at all on blade centering. It's right there. 100%. Again, the fit and finish and the execution on this blade is far better than I expected. I haven't heard of this brand until very recently, and I expected sharp edges on everything. I expected kind of cheap materials, perhaps, or a poor action on the blade itself. Maybe a bad pocket clip. I just didn't expect much because I didn't know what to expect. And actually, I'm really happy with the overall fit and finish and build quality of the knife. It feels like something that is worth the dollar, and performance-wise, I think it's right up there for some of the more hard-use type liner locks. If you like this blade, go ahead and comment down below what you like about it. If you have one, maybe one of their other models, especially their carbon fiber models, maybe comment down below. I would love to hear what your experience has been with this brand, and if you want to see something else from them, let me know too, and I'll try to get it into the channel.